Hey everybody, Matt here for AVC and welcome back to the shop. Today we have a special one for you. We're finally installing our wall kit in our Ford Transit. Let's get to work. Before we get installing our wall kit, it's important to take note of a few things that make the Ford Transit special. The upper section of the driver's side wall here has some hardened steel, so we can't put any screws into this location, this panel in particular. This panel here is just standard steel, so we can actually put screws into this panel here. Again, that panel is the same on the passenger door side. So above the slider door, this is hardened steel, and that's why we have Rivnuts in this location, so we can bolt these panels in with a 1/4-20 finish fastener. If I peel back some of the upholstery work here, you can see that this hardened steel comes down below the seam. So this is where our middle panel is going to go. This is the seam that goes to our upper panel. But you can see that hardened steel section comes down below that seam, and that's an important one to know when we're going to put a screw in this front panel. If you watched our pre-wire video, you know that we're going to make a few penetrations with those wires out of our wall kit as we install. So we're planning to bring the wires that are tucked back here out to our power system, and then we're going to bring them through the walls in the other end locations as well. One of those locations is here behind our kitchenette. So we do have a wire run that's going to pop out of the wall in this location, and we're going to make sure we cut those holes before we do our install. Lastly, we're going to leave these wires coming to our control panel location tucked behind the wall until our overheads are ready to install so that we get an accurate wire penetration in our wall kit. Because our battery system is going to be here on the passenger side, all of our home runs need to come out of the wall kit at this location. So let's take a couple measurements, transfer them to our wall panel so we can get our wires coming out in the correct location. So it looks like we need to bring this hole 6 inches off the floor, and we can go 10 to 14 inches off the front wall. And that should give us enough room to bring all of those wires through to the inside of our utility. Because we have a lot of wires coming through in this location, let's go ahead and cut this open into a pill shape with a jigsaw. With this hole in place, we can start pulling our wires through that section. All right. With our wires brought through that panel, we're ready to put our first screws in for our final install. So installing our first 2 panels was pretty easy because we've already test fit these when we installed our window. Now that we need to install this last upper section for the passenger wall, it's important to get our screws in the right location. So if we look at the wall panel here, if we match the same distance here to above, we're going to get right in these big open holes. This one, we have some complications from some of the holes in the steel here. This one is just flat out in the middle of this big pill shape. And this one back here is right over at the top of the wiring harness. So we're going to have to adjust our screw pattern for this upper section. The best thing to do is going to be hit this ribbon of steel because it's the least broken throughout the van. And if we take a measurement, 2.5 is going to hit dead center. So let's go ahead and put our screws at 2.5 inches off the bottom of the seam. With the majority of our wall kit panels in place, we've come to the last 2 panels. These are going to be the driver's side upper and our passenger side upper. Now these panels differ from the others because they don't screw in, and that's because we have that hardened steel on the Ford Transit here. So if we look at the panel, we can see that there's pill shapes here on the panel, and those pill shapes correspond to the Rivnuts in that upper wall section right up here. So we put a 1/4-20 Rivnut in that location, and now we're going to bolt this panel in. So I used my awl and I popped a couple of holes in my panel so that I can find where those locations are. And I'm going to start the hardware with a really long piece here. Screw right in. So it can be a challenge to get this hardware through and to match up with those Rivnuts. And that's why we gave it a pill shape so you have a little bit of room. And looking behind, I can tell that I'm at a bit of an angle here. So I'm going to cut some of this fabric away. I'm going to open that pill up and allow me a little easier time finding that location. There it is. And with that last 1/4-20 in place, this install is complete. These last few bolts here can be a challenge, but just take your time and you'll get it done right. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, it's time. We'll see you on the next video.